couple of those, a couple of those things, or maybe some things that people really don't think about at a younger child's age. So, are there any questions right off the bat?
So I do have a question from a parent who was unable to be here.
Okay.
And so they were asking, let me see if I can pull up the exact question, but pretty much it was around what age do you feel like you should start talking to your children about like stranger danger, all of that kind of stuff?
I mean, as early as possible, as far as them being able to understand what you're actually trying to convey to them. So that school age, preschool, that type of age where they're they can kind of comprehend what it is you're actually trying to tell them. Usually, kids early on, they pick up on parents, grandparents, sisters, brothers, those type of things where they recognize those individuals. So, but as early as they can start recognizing the difference between people that they know and people that I don't quite know who this person is, then I would say that's going to be the appropriate age. And then also that's just going to depend on the child. Also, some children, they'll pick up on the stuff very quickly. But yeah, as soon as the earliest you can get them to really comprehend what you explain to them, I would go ahead and talk to them about that. Yes. Anything else?
Vilas, do you guys have any questions specifically? It seems like not. So
okay.
If you would like to go ahead and get started.
A couple topics I want to talk about. One, of course, is going to be gun safety. That may not affect a lot of people. A lot of people don't have handguns, but if you have them in your household, then it's always a couple of things that we need to think about. And children are pretty good about paying attention, even though you think they aren't. They're actually paying attention to habits, and so you make sure you always, if you have handguns in your home, put them in an area where the kid cannot access them. Sometimes, in that one of those things where we think we're hiding it from them, and they, may come across it. So the main things is the location needs to be somewhere where it can be secured. First of all, you can lock it up, or in some sort of case where it's lockable and stays locked. Maybe a location where they can't reach it, so high up above, to where they can't get in the chair and reach it, or any of those things. So no drawers unless it's a locking drawer. Like I say, if you put it under the bed, having a locked box is one of those things, because like I said before, we may not think they're paying attention to where we place things, or it's almost like if it's a needle in the haystack, a child will find it, that needle. So you always want to take those extra steps in order to keep or prevent them from having access to such things. I would even say, be mindful of your, kitchen appliances, as far as, or your, knives and all those things in your kitchen. Put the child safety locks on all your drawers and cabinets where they can access any of those things, whether it be household chemicals, uh, all those items. So, but that's definitely one I want to cover is there's weapons going to be held in our household. Definitely have those things locked up, out of sight, out of mind, up high where they can't actually uh, reach them is always going to be a good thing. But like I said, if you can't put it somewhere up high, always make sure it's locked up. I think that's one of the things I've seen where I have the lockbox, or I have the gun safe, or I have all these things, but it's easier for me to just close it and not lock it because either I can't remember the locking number, or I can't find the key, or one of those things. We're gonna take those steps to purchase those things and make sure we have those things locked up. So, any questions? Next thing I want to talk about, I see it a lot of times also is living room furniture is one thing. A lot of accidents and injuries and even deaths occur because children climb on furniture. So that's another thing to kind of think about. Have a large television on a dresser, or a large TV stand. Most of your furniture you purchase nowadays will have those safety straps. And I know we don't use them half the time, but the safety straps where we can actually strap the furniture to where it's strapped to the wall and keeps those items from tilting over. That's another thing we need to think about. A lot of accidents occur because children are at an age where they like to walk around and explore, and that also means climb. So they'll climb the furniture, the items of the dresser will fall over, the TV will fall over and injure the child. So we actually have to be careful of that. And one test I always say is, if you have just a wooden floor, no carpet or any of those things, and something as minimal as you kind of pull on the furniture and see if it tilts forward or if it even wobbles. That's a reason to say, hey, I need to take extra steps in order to secure those items. In most cases, we don't think it will ever happen, but those items, as far as the straps, come with the furniture for a reason, and we don't want to have any injuries or accidental deaths because of furniture falling over on the child, or televisions, or any of those things, or just items coming off and striking the child. So we have to be aware of keeping up with those items and actually strapping the furniture to the wall, or any of those steps we have to take. Sometimes you can buy like the rubber mounts that go on the bottom of the furniture, the feet, and those will actually stabilize it to where it doesn't rock or shake. But the straps are going to be your number one thing that you need to try to utilize. Buying furniture, also if it's brand new, that should come with it. If you bought furniture from another person, you can always go to like Walmart, Lowe's. They'll have those items that you can make the furniture safe. In addition to, you got to think about also, say if I have a dresser and I put a safety latch on the front of it, the child pulls that, trying to open up those items, and then they also pull the furniture over. So it's definitely something that we need to think about as a preventative measure. Questions? I'll ask this throughout. Make sure anybody has any questions about anything as we go through. Any questions about the furniture and safety straps or any of that stuff, or even the handguns, weapons, things of that nature. Next thing I want to cover is driveway safety. And I think a lot of people don't think about this also is, just being aware of your surroundings when children are outside playing. It could be one thing where one parent is there, the child is outside playing, the other parent, and it happens to the best of us. We're running late for work, we're running late, we have to go somewhere, and we're not paying attention to the kids in the driveway. Seen accidents where children are just playing behind vehicles. A lot of vehicles now have those backup sensors, backup cameras, but not everybody has access to that. You have older vehicles, and we don't want accidents to happen. Us backing out of the driveway, or even pulling out of the driveway, if they're at that age where you can't physically see them in front of a vehicle or one of those things, it's always safe to make sure before you leave out, to look behind the corner, make sure and it also works with personal experience with household tools and things of that nature. I've had weed eaters ran over, bicycles ran over because my spouse, or at the time, my spouse she doesn't look outside the garage. She just gets in the car, starts it up, and backs out. Or pulls in the driveway, and whatever's in there, she may not see it. And it's one of those things where, we can get distracted by things. We shouldn't be on the phone, but that does happen also. Even if we're not holding the phone, just talking on the Bluetooth or some of those things. And it's a routine skill that you have. You're pulling in your driveway, pulling in the garage, it's automatic. Sometimes you do those things without even thinking about it. And so you're not telling yourself or preparing that there could possibly be somebody in the driveway. There could be items in the driveway. You're not really focused on that. You're focused on the conversation, focused on getting home, making dinner, all those things. So you just have to be cognizant of maybe the children playing in the driveway, or they're running around, and then things happen because they're out playing. So just be aware of that driveway, and that's a big one that we have to be mindful of. You don't want an accident to occur in those situations. So take that extra time to be mindful of. Let me look around, make sure everything's out of my way as I'm leaving out. And one of my biggest things is with my kids, they're done playing with something. Hey, let's put it up, let's put it where it goes. And, even, doing that, sometimes a basketball is going to be left out. One of those items. So, if you make it a habit of just checking before you leave out of any of those things, make sure the kids are, make it, if it's possible, and I know everybody does not have, access to a backyard or an area where kids can actually play outside of front of the house where your traffic is going to be, as far as coming in and out, as far as driving, the driveway, all those things. But if possible, make it a routine where y'all are playing, then this is where you're at when you play. So it eliminates the whole playing in the front yard, playing in the driveway, all those things. Make those, if it's possible, make that kind of like an area that you typically shouldn't be. So you will be playing in the backyard, all those things. So that kind of eliminates some of that stuff as far as the driveway accidents and all. So. Any questions about that? Anybody got any questions about maybe seatbelt stuff or car seat restraints or any of that? No questions or?
I don't think we have any specific questions around that, but it might just be helpful for you to talk about anything that you'd like to share along those lines. I know like with leaving kids in their car seat in the back seat, that's kind of become a big issue. So so anything you could speak to around that might be helpful.
And really with that, you know, sometimes we get in the whole thing about age and weight and those things. Typically, it just says, you know, that birth to 12 months, you're going to have that the rear facing car seat, and they stay in that the rear facing until I think about you start looking at like 1 to 3, you start thinking, well, but I think 3 years is always a good time to where you can actually come from the rear facing to the forward facing. I would always eye on the later years to make my changes versus like, all right, they're 1, now I can turn them around. I would wait till about that 2 to 3 age and then have them forward facing. You know, I've got 2 boys, and my youngest boy happens to be very short. So he, you know, was late far as some of the stuff because we felt like he was small. So some of those, you know, we kind of looked at, okay, well, age-wise, he's fine. But his size, he was still on that same size, you know, of a 1 or 2-year-old when he was 3. So, you know, we have to look at that versus just his age. He was fine, but his physical size was still in question. So we kept him rear facing until we felt comfortable with, you know, him getting a little bit bigger before we made those changes. And then typically your forward facing, you'll stay in that from that 4 to 7 age range. And then 8 to 12 is what they typically say. I've seen 8 to 13 in some cases where you start looking at a booster seat. But then again, you got to start thinking about, well, okay, their size also. So, you know, like I said before, my youngest was small and still is kind of small for his age. He's 11 now, and you know, he is still was in a booster seat, you know, for a long time, for a long period, and still is on occasion, just depending on what vehicle he's in. And then that's another thing you need to look at the actual vehicle that that child is going to be placed in as far as the booster seat goes. But typically, I would stay at 8 to 12 or 8 to 13, keep them in the booster seat until they kind of catch up with their size and age, fits to where they need to be. And then 13, after that, you can start thinking about if they can sit in the front seat and all those things. But I would even just say 14. Make it 14 front seat and rear seat, then they're fine without a booster.
Okay, and Vilas just asked which position or setup as far as in the middle, the left side, or the right side in the car for a car seat is safer.
Really, out of convenience, I would say that middle seat is always a good thing because it keeps, and then it also helps. I would get one of those because you'll have the rear view mirror, but get one of those. You can get like it's a kind of like a parabolic mirror where it's a curved mirror, and you can actually use that. They have them where they stick on the glass or right above the car seat, and you can that way you can look in your rear view mirror and actually see the child's face and what they're doing all at the same time if they're in that middle seat. And then always, with the middle seat also it helps because some vehicles nowadays have those side airbags, and it's one of those things where that eliminates any of those things where the child is in the middle. You don't have to worry about a side airbag hitting the car seat on either side, glass and all those things right in the middle. So I always eye on the middle seat as a good place. And then I'm paranoid, so I have to make sure car doors, nobody can open the car door, and the child's right there. So the middle portion is always a good spot. I always. That's something we use a lot because we had a large SUV, so we just have them in the middle seat. It's easier for us to kind of maneuver things with them in the middle seat versus behind the driver's seat or passenger seat where we can't reach it. That's pulling us from our focus as driving and all those things. So. Any more questions about that? Got it good? All right. And then one other subject I want to cover, and I think a lot of people probably don't think about this, and because the first thing is people think, well, my child's young, so I really don't have to worry about this until later. Now that things have changed, um, and we've seen a lot of these things happen a lot more. You need to start worrying about your child's credit. And identity theft is a big thing with younger children, and um, gone is the day of worrying about. Well, I don't want to say gone, but it used to be you had to worry if you were, that 20 to 30-year-old, 40-year-old, or even your elderly person about getting your identity stolen. Nowadays, it's changed to where people are taking information from and using, a child's information for as if they're getting taxes filled out, social security numbers, um, uh, any of that information, they're using it earlier now with younger children. So now is the time to kind of focus on that and try to correct some of those things. So even with a child, and I would even suggest this with an adult, anytime, say if you're not purchasing anything as an adult, and you know you're not going to purchase anything, you can go in and freeze your credit. So, and you can also do that with a child, and then that way you don't have to worry about anybody being able to use your information to purchase anything until you give permission for it. So you can go to one of the credit bureaus or all and just say, hey, I'm going to freeze my credit. And then with that, you can either set it up to where once it's frozen, and say if you decide to purchase something, they'll give you maybe a 3 or 4 month window, and then it closes again. Or you can unfreeze it for however long you want to, and then refreeze it once you're done. So like if you're gonna buy a house, a car, or whatever, um, you can unfreeze it for that short period of time. They give you, like I say, they give you a window because it shouldn't take no much longer than 2 or 3 months or whatever to get that done, and then it refreezes. But if you're not going to buy anything, and your child's definitely not going to buy anything, I would suggest getting the credit frozen until time for them to actually be able to use the stuff. So, and I hate to say this, but that's just the way things are changing now. You have to protect your child's credit along with your own. And any of those safeguards, and towards the end of this, I'll give out some websites and stuff like that where they can go back and research some of the stuff. The one that I use a lot is going to be called Safe Kids, safekids.org. And if you go to safekids.org, they have just a list of safety tips from newborn on up until 19 years old. So they'll have tons of information, just about anything you can think of. They'll have that information on there. I know one that comes to mind is, we kind of touched on it earlier, just keeping up, making sure you lock your cabinets so children can't access chemicals and all those things. But we got different measures as far as items you can buy for us to help prevent that, ways to change certain, taking certain items and placing them here versus having them low, maybe put them in an upper cabinet versus a lower cabinet, kind of. So it'll have a bunch of different safety tips on that website, and I think it covers what I talked about earlier about the driveway safety, and they cover handguns, and they cover balls, and seat belts. And then another one that they see a lot of choking, as far as children being on the playground, make sure they don't have jewelry on or anything that can catch. So it's definitely a good website to go to.
And in talking a bit about the identity theft, do you have any tips that you could share just for general internet safety for kids? I know so many kids are getting online now, and we're seeing younger and younger kids being able to know how to use their parents' phones, all of that kind of stuff, how to log onto the computer and get on Zoom. So so do you have any?
So, the first thing is we gotta police. We gotta police what they're actually, they can't have access if we deny it. So a lot of the stuff is, there's other alternatives to a lot of the items. Even like YouTube, there's kids YouTube. So you can, if it's something that they need for as videos, you can always go in and check and see what the parental measures are on it. And go in and kind of adjust it to what what it is they actually need. And they even, and I know people have a problem with video games and all those things, but you can go into those video games also and set up a parental block, and it does not allow them to play certain games. It will take away any vulgar language, any images, or any of those things from the actual game. Um, you know, you can restrict that access. Same thing with any online uh, usage. If you've got internet in your home, you can restrict the access. You just have to go in through your settings and adjust it. And in most cases nowadays, your Wi-Fi is set up where it knows what it's being accessed by. So meaning if I have my phone and I'm on my Wi-Fi at home, it knows my phone versus, you know, my son's phone or his iPad. And you can go in and restrict what access they have, or you can take away the internet from them. You can block it at a certain time. You can, all those things. So we just have to make the extra steps. And the problem is kids now, they weren't born where they were at a time where there weren't computers. So, I hate to say it, but that's not going anywhere for them. So meaning, it's one of those things where the way things are now, you have to have some of those items, but we can go in and restrict what access they do have. You can't completely take it away because nowadays most classrooms require them to have internet access or a computer or something along those lines. Even my 11-year-old, he has a laptop that's supplied by the school that he has to do his homework on or study with and all those things. But there's still things that you cannot access on that laptop, or so I wouldn't say we have to completely take it away from them, but we can restrict the access that they do have on those items. And that's going to be the biggest thing, is just to restrict the access. There's certain websites that, they're just not going to be able to get on until they get a certain age. And then, you have to put your foot down when it comes to some of those things. Just be like, no, you can't have that, or, you're not going to be able to get on that. But, some of the other stuff, like I say, just work with the parental controls and all that. But then even doing those things, like I said before, kids are at a point now where they've always had those items. So with that, they are smart when it comes to figuring out how to get around those things. So then we have to be, we have to kind of physically go in and check also. Just putting the parameters up and then never checking, that's gonna also, come back to bite us. So we have to go back in and do a spot check from time to time, seeing if they've added additional apps that they shouldn't have in the first place. That's the other thing, iPhones, all those things. If it's an account, if it's the parent's account, then the phones or iPads, you shouldn't be able to access any apps or add any apps or purchase anything without a password or it notifying the parent. So you can go in and restrict that access also, and then be notified if something has changed or any settings on that account. So that's another way to kind of keep up with that stuff. It's a lot of work, to make sure that they're, not seeing things or hearing things that we necessarily don't feel like they should at this point. So you definitely got to go back in and do a spot check from time to time. Make sure everything is like you set it up to begin with. Like I said, they know how to do this stuff when they're born. They come out for whatever reason, and I've seen babies open up cell phones and they know how to scroll and all those things without, and then like I said, they pick up on a lot of things visually. So they see you do it, they know how to do it. And it's not something that you have to explain to them nowadays versus, previous years. So, anybody got anything? Questions about anything? I'm gonna give you uh, one thing you can do when we talked about child identity theft. You can always go to the FTC. It's called FTC .gov. FTC.gov/ID theft. And they've got a whole section on safeguarding your child's future. So if you go to the FTC website, and they'll have, like I said, they have a whole section on uh, the safeguards. And if something does happen, they have a step-by-step directions on how to try to help correct that. So they'll give you a complete walkthrough. So and then also, if you've had your identity stolen, they've got a step-by-step for the adults also. So definitely a good website to go to. And I think pretty much anything that they've got on there, they'll have additional stuff also, but if I think they have pamphlets that you can actually get off there for free. So definitely a good website to go to also. Questions about anything?
Okay, so we've got something in the chat. My question may sound weird to you, but I wonder, have you known any child trafficked in Athens? I always feel unsafe and afraid of kidnapping when my child was in the crowds at events. For example, in after school classes, there were usually groups of parents and children coming and going. I noticed many parents were glued to the cell phones when their child were in the class, but for me, I didn't dare to do that but always keep my child in sight. I wonder if I'm paying too much attention to this issue.
No, I mean, that's not weird at all. I haven't heard anything about younger children. I have heard some stuff about some uh, older, almost adult age or around that adult age um, issues that have come up. And then some of the surrounding counties we run into because it's a rural area. So, there's everything is more spread out. So you don't have access to a lot of things in some of the rural areas. So there's definitely something uh, that is occurring, but I haven't heard it far as young children. Um, but even with that, I would be worried. If I can't see them, and this is something that I always come up with. If I'm anywhere with my kids, we have this thing where you need to physically be able to see me and I see you at the same time. So there's always that. I don't want to be somewhere where I cannot, see what's going on and be aware of who's having contact with them and all these things. So, yeah, and younger children, I haven't heard anything, but I can't say for sure that that's something that you don't have to worry about. But I have heard it, like I say, in some of the surrounding counties, as far as that stuff going on. Recently, actually, I want to say maybe a month or two ago, there was some arrests being made. I want to say but it was a neighboring county, something similar to that. But it was older kids, and in my mind, 18, 19, 20-year-old, that's still an older kid in my mind. So, but it was around that age.
Okay, and she said that this is very helpful. Thanks so much.
Mhm.
I also have another question somebody sent. What do you think about code words for your child to recognize that you actually sent someone to pick them up if it's not you?
That's fine, but I would say it definitely needs to be a word that is not difficult to remember, but also it needs not to have anything to do with you or your child. Meaning, can be middle names, then does not need to be date of births or anything related. It needs to be actually a made up word would probably be the best thing. Where it has no meaning whatsoever other than to you and the child. And that would be the best thing because, I hate to say it, but sometimes these people that do these things are people that we know or know enough about us to, know your middle name or the child's middle name or have enough information to where they know, date of births. You never know where they're getting their information from. So, you know, it definitely needs to be a made up word, uh, one that you and your child, and then that's the thing. We don't discuss the word with anybody outside of, the parents and the child. That way, if it is given to somebody outside of that, it's definitely somebody that is there sent by you, you know. So that's definitely going to be a big factor. And I will add though, if it's difficult to do a made up word, just make sure it's a word that has nothing to do with any of y'all. So if it's the word wood and your last name isn't Wood or any of those things, then that's fine. But it should not lead back to the child or the parent as far as whatever the word may be.
I don't see anything else in chat. Vila says, thank you for important information and thank you for organizing this talk for us. Hey, Tism.
Yeah, I've been here all the time. I was like, let me show my face. I'm sorry, I had a conflicting meeting, so I didn't start on time. But from the little you said, thank you for sharing, and I hope to listen to the record because it's scary. Sometimes on your phone you just receive like the Amber Alert. This child has been kidnapped. This child has been kidnapped. So sometimes it really like keeps me on my toe as a parent, and I'm always skeptical of taking my son out, especially on weekends when I know places will be crowded, and now that he's becoming more active. And again, the technology you talked about, these kids are becoming very smart. My son, sometimes he just becomes dubious and says cheese, cheese. And like you said, you wouldn't know that they're learning so fast, the way you would screw up the phone, the way, so it's something I would have to think and, re-strategize. Thank you.
All right, welcome. Yeah, and with that, I know you talked about you were getting the notifications. One good thing too is, and a lot of people really don't think about that. Always have a good current picture of your child. Some people don't like taking photos, but it's always helpful also to be able to, have a current picture of the child, all those things, just in case, if they were to be, missing, or one of those things where you have those identifiers to help, um, identify the child easily and quickly. Because you would be surprised how many people just don't have current pictures of the kids, or um, anything they can, give as an identifier for the child.
Oh, thank you.
See here. Let's talk about real quick medications. That's a big thing to also think about. If the child has medications that they take, or even the parents, if there's a situation where you always have those things put up somewhere. Once again, um, just like anything else, you got a medicine cabinet. If it's up high, or you have maybe a cabinet where you're placing those things, make sure those are secure. Because a child may see it as you taking the medication, so they assume that it's something good, so they can take it. So they may make an attempt to actually ingest the stuff, or they don't know the difference between when they're supposed to take it and when not. So you always eye on caution, on the side of caution, by making sure those items are secure. Don't leave them just sitting around. Have a place for them. Make sure they always go back to that place they're supposed to be, and not just sitting around. Medication is always a big thing. We just have to be aware of it. We have small kids that we're replacing them. In fact, they can actually ingest those things because they assume that it's candy, or it's fine to have because mommy or daddy is taking it, or they've given it to me before. So why not? If one didn't do anything, hey, why not take 10 or 20? So you always have to make sure keeping those things out of reach and out of sight, out of mind is my biggest thing. Out of sight, out of mind. Questions about that? Um, this is something and I want to touch on, because somebody had brought it up to me maybe last week or something about if you've got washer and dryer in your home, making sure those things the child can't access those. And now a lot of them are set up to where it either has the top mount, or I would even say kind of being aware of the child, far as them being able to try to climb in the dryer, or climb in the washing machine, all those things. So, and I think someone had mentioned, and I'm just trying to remember the conversation we had, where they were playing hide and seek, and the child, they were looking for the child. And it was an unusual amount of time that they were able to find the child. Usually, 10, 15 minutes, it's quick, we find them. And then this last time, they were looking for it, and it went a little bit longer than usual. And so what happened was, they then heard like I think the dryer opened up, and the child came out and said, what took you so, and it was just that moment just startled. So, we got to think about, and really, I don't really have an answer, but I would say, you know, especially older washers or dryer, you know, I would even say take a chair or something and sit in front of those things to kind of block it, or uh, you know, or have the conversation if they're at the age to have the conversation where those are off limits. And only thing that goes in those things are clothes, and we wash and dry them, and that's it. We don't climb in them. It's not a good hiding place or all those things. So, because you know, you never really think about stuff like that until, like I say, when that was brought up, it was kind of like, never really thought about that. And I wouldn't think my kids would do that, but then you never know. So, you know, it's just something to think about. And I know recently they've done a good job about um, the laundry packs, the liquid laundry packs, because the different colors that they have, kids look at them and they think it's candy or something along those lines. So they always say, you know, if you make sure those things are locked up, because I know once you take the cap off, and just sit the cap back on, a lot of people don't physically twist and lock them. And they're supposed to be child-proof now, so you know, any of that stuff, you just have to be mindful of it. Just something that just came to mind here, because I know we had, I can't remember who it was, but we had a conversation about them playing hide and seek, and the child was actually in the dryer. It scared them, but I was like, yeah, that's understandable. I would be afraid also of something like that. So just something to think about. Just can't even mind. Anybody got any questions about that? Yes.
Yeah, we got about 4 more minutes. So anybody has any questions or anything?
And if it's one of those things, because I tend to get this way also, it doesn't come to mind until later. So, you know, if you have any questions about anything, feel free. And reach out to me. I'm gonna give you all my office number. It's gonna be 706 542 0104. That'll be my office number. I'm here typically Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, pretty much every day. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to call. It's one of those things where I happen not to be here. They'll answer and take a message, and they'll get it to me, and I'll get back with you as soon as I can. Like I said, if I don't know the answer right offhand, I can always research it and get the information to you. So. Got anything else? That's all I have, y'all. But like I said, if anything comes to mind, feel free to call. Any questions about anything? If it's not just child stuff, if it's some other thing you have a question about, you can always call us.
Thank you so much for taking the time to share all of this great information. You covered so many different things, and we really appreciate you being here and talking with our families, and maybe just helping some of these families to know what to anticipate or keep in mind. So very appreciative.
You're welcome. I appreciate y'all giving me the opportunity to be a part of this. This is awesome. So that's all I got, y'all. Y'all have a good one.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.